Hello and welcome to a video that we are going to discuss open space access on Long Island. It has recently come out in Newsday and the links are below in the description. They have done a very excellent, thorough article on this, that Nassau has purchased land for preservation, but unfortunately a lot of that land is inaccessible or off limits to the public due to some snobby people and some corruption that are trying to keep the public out. So I'm going to read to you this article about this, and then I'm going to show you a little more as to where these areas are. Alright, so we're going to read this article to you. This is about hidden parkland in Nassau County. And please look at the links below for the full story on this from News 12 and Newsday. After 300 newly protected areas were bought under Nassau County's two landmark environmental bond acts, officials and program backers plan for welcome booths and walking trails, kayak launches, and well-placed benches for contemplation. The only thing that I envision is to make it accessible to the public. Tom Mayer, environmental coordinator for then County Executive Thomas Suozzi, told legislators in July 2006 when the first 6 acquisitions were approved. It's the public that purchased these properties. More than a decade later, many of these plans have not materialized, a Newsday investigation has found, leaving the county with a hidden landscape of pristine open spaces that many of its residents never use and may not even know exist, though they continue to pay for it. At one time, an Eagle Scout was responsible for the only substantial improvements, a small strip of fencing and a single gravel parking lot cut onto a narrow road shoulder. At another, the modest county sign is noting its public preservation disappeared for years. At a third, a dead-end warning is posted on a chain-link fence blocking entry. There's no real money to even patrol and keep an eye on these, said Richard Charvet, Vice Chairman of the county's Open Space and Parks Advisory Committee, which reviewed environmental bond purchases. The absence of once promised markers, promotion, and amenities affects about a third of the acres that Nassau spent $100 million on between 2006 and 2012, using bond proceeds voters approved in 2 referendums. Some of the acquisitions extended nature preserves that had existed for decades, or kept the county's last farms running and needed little in the way of enhancement. But much of the newly created public green space, some of which was bought from people with ties to county politics, the property selection process, or both, is marked by what isn't there, starting with prominent entry points and informational kiosks. County officials once estimated that these improvements would have cost less than $300,000, but later said a general lack of funds and resistance from environmentalists scuttled the plans. They also alluded to opposition to access enhancements from the people who had long held the properties, primarily pieces of tucked-away North Shore estates sold to Nassau for prices that sometimes eclipsed county appraisals or market value assessments. We went over and above to make sure every property would have access, and we got some pushback, believe it or not, from the families, said Sean Rainey, the deputy real estate director under Suozzi, who advocated for some of the never-realized plans, such as heavier promotion. He recalled that he once had put up signs pointing visitors from an existing county preserve to newly acquired land across the street. Area residents who rode horses there, he said he believes, took them down. They didn't like the fact the public was accessing the property that they felt they had a right to, Rainey said. Daniel Press, a professor of environmental studies at the University of California, Santa Cruz, who had written extensively on government land preservation, said that there is a higher chance of public disillusionment with open space programs that don't strike the right balance between protecting sensitive parcels and making them known and accessible. If the public doesn't feel like they have access to those big pieces, if they are remote or recreational opportunities are not very good, then they feel resentful, Press said. The thought is we all spent this money and we don't have access here. Suozzi, a Democrat who served as county executive from 2002 to 2009 and now represents the 3rd Congressional District, declined to speak in detail about the bond acts, including property access issues. His political advisor, Kim Devlin, issued a statement that, in part, said the program enabled the county to protect its precious resources from development and environmental degradation. Other bond backers built on that point, noting that access improvements and other issues should be considered secondary to ensuring that ecologically sensitive land is never developed. The idea was to preserve what's left, and I think we accomplished that, said Adrienne Esposito, the Citizens Campaign for the Environment executive director, who also served on the county advisory committees that recommended parcels for purchase. The subject of access can always be taken up. It is not lost. The process laid out by the Bond Act referendums required parcels to be nominated to and then recommended for purchase by the advisory committees largely appointed by the county executive. Suozzi's office signed off on the recommendations after obtaining approval from the county's Planning Commission and Open Space and Parks Committee. As a last step, a supermajority of the county legislature had to vote in favor of each deal. The advisory committees gave priority to potential open space purchases located in special groundwater protection area, near existing preserves, or under development pressure. Their report, however, also specifically noted that accessibility to the public was among the most important considerations for recommended parcels. Lisa Ott, president and CEO of the North Shore Land Alliance, the Oyster Bay nonprofit that lobbied for the referendums and was involved in the property selection process, said access was always a goal, but she argued that the most important aspect was protecting the land. The Democrats and Republicans came together, Ott said, noting the unanimous approval of all Bond Act purchases by the 19-member county legislature as a rarity in the Nassau politics. They did something good for the future of Long Island, and it was one of those brief and shining moments when the clouds aligned. And the next section is Access Plan Stalls. The Bond Act that passed overwhelmingly in 2004 and 2006 created $150 million in dedicated environmental funding. About $50 million was earmarked primarily for park and stormwater improvements. The rest was used for open space preservation through the acquisition of land and development rights. Nearly all of that money was spent under Suozzi. The timing of Suozzi's surprise loss to Republican Edward Mangano in 2009 left many of the administration's access promises, stated generally during public legislative meetings, unfulfilled. Staff under Mangano at first attempted to pick up the torch in specific detail. In 2011, county parks, public works, and real estate officials jointly drafted an enhanced public access proposal that would have installed entryway kiosks with maps and other information about the land at 10 sites purchased with Bond Act funds, proper signage at 9 sites, decorative post and rail fencing around the property boundaries at least 4 sites, and allocated money for surveys for new trails at 3 sites. The so-called Nassau County Open Space Plan was never formally realized, but obtained by Newsday from the county was developed to find other ways to better utilize Bond Act purchases and ensure that these properties are accessible to the residents. Alright? So, after asserting that some properties, such as the working farms, didn't lend themselves to any improvements, the report concluded the county believes that the improvements described in this plan strike a balance between preservation and open space, accessibility to the residents of Nassau County, and wisely using the county's financial resources. An engineering firm drew up proposals for some of the work, estimating its cost at $238,000. At that point, nearly all the open space funds had been used. The last transaction would come a year later in 2012, when Mangano negotiated a deal to buy 4.2 acres of the old Brooklyn Waterworks property in Freeport for $6.2 million. The property was owned by influential developer and Oheka Castle owner Gary Melius, a Mangano friend who gave him thousands of dollars in campaign contributions. In paying Melius, $3.5 million more for his land than its highest appraisal by the Suozzi administration, Mangano's office was in line with the figures reached by its appraisers. But the higher price led to $4.5 million being taken from what little remained of the Bond Act's acquisition funds. So the county tapped a separate open space account for the additional $1.7 million balance, taking more than half of what was available there at the time. Mangano, who left office at the end of this year, recently stood trial on unrelated federal corruption charges, with the case ending in a mistrial. His attorney did not respond to a request for comment. Of the proposed access plans drafted in 2011, Brian Schneider, who worked on it for Mangano and now serves as deputy county executive for his successor, Democrat Laura Curran, said, "It was kind of withered. I don't think we really had a clear direction. Some people had strong opinions about it getting done. Other people were like, this needs to be left alone." Today, Nassau has agreements with the Land Alliance for basic maintenance and upkeep of some of the sites. In explaining the lobbying, she sometimes had to convince estate owners to sell the land to the county. Ott acknowledged the mindset that caused pushback to access. It was a risk for people to sell the land to the government. They didn't know if tour buses, she said, her thought of trailing off. They were fearful. People's backyards is the next section. So, during legislative discussion on the 11-acre old-growth forest in Glen Cove dubbed Red Spring Woods, some lawmakers, led by then Planning Development and Environment Committee Chairman Dave Denenberg, said they were uncomfortable with the property's location within a ring of residential homes. He called the preserve, in essence, people's backyards. "If we're protecting your backyard, it better be open," Denenberg, in an interview, recalled telling Suozzi administration officials. The lawmaker, who left office in 2015 after his guilty plea to federal mail fraud charges related to his private law firm work, extracted pledges that they'd eventually provide signage, parking, a clear entryway, and marked trails at the Glen Cove site and others. "That's the intent to do with all of the properties, create trail maps so people can access the properties," Ma repeated in 2008, but it takes a little time to put it together. At Red Spring Woods, the county only erected a small sign noting the land's preservation as open space, one in which Suozzi's name was plated over that of his successor, Mangano, a narrow gravel cutout on the shoulder of the land, barely enough for a single car, and a small strip of post and rail fence were put in not by Nassau, but by the Eagle Scout. New marked trails were never cut through the property, and an informational kiosk, including a map, was never placed at the entryway. And walking onto the property with little designation of its boundaries feels akin to trespassing onto people's backyards. One yard belongs to Gordon Allen, who was Suozzi's special assistant in the county's personnel office at the time he sold 1.77 acres of his family's land to the county for $600,000 to extend the initial 9-acre Red Spring Woods purchase. The most significant completed aspects of the county's 2011 access plan were small gravel parking lots installed at cost of roughly $37,000 each at the 25-acre Mill Neck property that was split from the estate of Adele Smithers, the philanthropist who had been a campaign contributor to Suozzi, and at the 29-acre Red Coat Preserve in Oyster Bay Cove, put together with parts of the 3 estates owned by the Land Alliance, financial backers, and ex-in-laws of Suozzi's one-time Deputy Planning Commissioner, Katie Schwab. Rainey, the Deputy Real Estate Director under Suozzi, advocated for the parking lots and said that the one at Red Coat Preserve especially received pushback from residents and officials of the exclusive Oyster Bay Cove, which has a population of 2,000 people and a median household income of $250,000, according to census figures. They didn't want a parking lot there. We said, you have to put access to the public, he recalled. But most residents wouldn't know the parking lot exists because at the preserve's most visible frontage point, the corner of Route 25A and Yellow Coat Road, the only sign is for a private school a half-mile up the road. The sign there that noted the county's land preservation has been missing for at least 6 years. The preserve's parking lot also long had no sign indicating its public ownership until a small one was placed there in late May following Newsday's inquiries. It kind of annoys me because that's publicly preserved land, Rainey said. Thomas Pulling, a Swazi Campaign and Land Alliance contributor who sold 16 acres of his family land to the county for $6.5 million, making up the largest portion of the Redcoat Preserve, said he and his sister, who sold a smaller portion of the land toward it, would never or have discouraged the use of the property. He added, kiosks and signs and fencing would be sort of counter to the fact that open space really needs to look as natural as possible. Within the last month, officials for the first time placed a small informational kiosk featuring a map and description of the site's meadow and woodland wildlife at the foot of the parking lot. At Red Spring Woods, residents who supported the land's preservation say its value as a site of quiet recreation is unfulfilled, as its lack of parking or delineation and its location in a residential neighborhood removed from any main county thoroughfares discourages wider public use. As far as being a benefit to the county at large, I'd probably say no, said David Niari, a Glen Cove resident who designed a website for the Coalition to Save Red Spring Woods, a local group that pushed for its preservation. The only benefit I saw is that it's one additional parcel of woods that won't be developed. Most people don't even know about this spot, said Rainey, who produced a pamphlet advertising county open space acquisitions that never received prominent display or distribution. In addition, neither Red Spring Woods or Redcoat are listed among the county-operated preserves on the county's website. And the next section, you can hop a fence. The county's 2011 draft access plan also proposed drawing attention to a 3.4-acre cluster of wetlands on a peninsula in Baldwin Harbor. Nassau bought the lots composing the site for $4.8 million using Bond Act funds. The report proposed prominent storage and an informational kiosk. Advocates for the purchase said they once envisioned a public kayak launch. Today, however, it is blocked off from public access with a dead-end sign at the end of the residential block it sits on. Even the small ceremonial sign marking its preservation as open space is blocked and obscured. You can hop a fence and go through there, said Schneider, noting that the barrier was erected at a cost of $12,710 because of concerns from residents who live at the end of the block about parking, security, and maintenance. There really isn't that much to see. But in 2006, when Marr was pitching legislators on acquisition of the bulk of the property, he noted adjacent land already owned by Nassau, saying, we could build onto that and really make it into something that is attractive and very useful to the residents of Nassau County on the South Shore. Jimmy Velarde, the developer who held the majority of the Baldwin Harbor lots, before selling them for $4 million to the county after his luxury housing proposal hit resident opposition, said he no longer has a vested interest in what happens there, but he said the vistas from the site across the bay made it worthy to try and provide access to. It's a beautiful piece, totally open bay, said Velarde, an elected Republican Town of Hempstead Sanitary District Commissioner who also serves as chairman of the County Bridge Authority. It would be nice if they set these things up for some public use. A 1-acre plot of wetlands along a canal in Seaford, purchased in 2008 for $635,000, runs parallel to the county's Cedar Creek Park on one side and is surrounded by homes on the other. Ott called it a beautiful, serene spot where you can imagine a bench and people walking. And there were lots and lots of birds the day we visited, noting how she envisioned the property would be appreciated. There was just nothing there that was really undeveloped and gave people a place to sit and reflect and ponder. Like the other properties, however, the county never installed an entry kiosk or decorative fencing around its borders. Today, no trespassing signs are posted on utility poles across the curb, while the lack of clear signage and a thick wall of overgrown brush suggests no real access point to the waterside strip. So what did we accomplish? Said Victor Consiglio, a former Massapequa resident who volunteered in local waterways cleanup efforts and served on one of the county advisory committees that recommended Bond Act purchases. We helped the landowner. Gary Carlton, an attorney and North Woodmere civic activist who served on the same advisory committee, took the opposite viewpoint. I think in a lot of ways it was more important that the county just preserve this for the environmental purpose rather than think it was going to be a big public access space. Schneider, who inherited management of some of the open space purchases after they were finalized, said he could see both points of view, but noted that county officials could have more clearly and explicitly drawn up access plans before closing on deals. Many deals were rushed through in a matter of months, with environmentalists warning prospective sellers would turn to developers if Nassau didn't act with urgency. They just did it, Schneider said. There was no wherewithal of thought of the next step. Okay, so we are going to look at the areas that are have been like designated parkland, but that are not really accessible to the public. And we got to zoom in first here, and then we click on them. So we'll start off with work our way from south to north, I guess. So first we'll start off with the South Shore, and there is this property called the Gold Property, or this is Cedar Creek Park. But there's this area on the south end, I think the south end of the park. No, this is part of the park, but this area is a 1 acre parcel. Yeah, it's very small, near Island Channel Road, right near Cedar Creek Park. But this site is lined with utility poles containing no trespassing warners and is well with overgrown brush and discourages access. The county, under a 2011 plan, proposed installing proper signage and an informational kiosk at the property's entrance and post and rail fencing around the entire property, but the improvements were never made. Alright, so that's one area, and then we've got this area here, so we'll zoom out here and go to, there was another area. Okay, we got to get out of this, hold on. Alright, well, it's just going to go to next. I wanted to work my way from north to south. Let's see, it doesn't really want to. Alright, let's do this. We hit the back button, and we do this again. Alright. I don't understand why we're getting all these pop-ups. This map is extremely hard to use, so I do apologize, but I want to show you the areas that are. You got to be kidding me. Alright, the other area is the Brooklyn Water Works. This is in Freeport. And this is 4.16 acre adjacent to the county-owned Brookside Preserve. Was purchased by the county for $6.2 million from the developer Gary Melius. But the deal was the price was more than double what the property had been appraised for, and that was struck by the administration of then county executive Edward Mangano, Amelia's friend. And okay, this is something right here. This is yet another thing that Mr. Mangano should be charged with. And I can't even, there's so many. So now we'll just hit the next button. I guess that's the only way to do it. Then there's another piece of property on the South Shore in Baldwin called Parkway Drive. It's a 3.4 acre property consisting of nearly 4 dozen lots along Baldwin Bay, and it was acquired by the county over 2 purchases. But the property is fenced off from public access at the dead end of residential Parkway Drive. The county, under a 2011 plan, proposed installing proper signage, but the improvements were never made. So this is where it is. And we're going to look at this on Google Maps, too. We're going to look at some of these sites as well. All right, now we'll go to the next one. All right, we did that already. Now we go to Old Brookville. The county in 2019 joined with the nonprofit North Shore Land Alliance to purchase 24.9 acres owned by the family that runs the nearby Banfi Vinters. An additional 35 acres, which was the bright green parcel over here, was preserved as a land swap between the county and a private individual in Oyster Bay Cove. And so now they're raising crops on some of the land, and this is the installing proper signage. The improvements were never made, though. All right, and then we go to West Hempstead. There's an area called Trout Lake, which is now a dry lake in a residential area. The area had been long used for illegal dumping, and it was fenced off to restrict access. So it's another one. So we have all this parkland here that the people aren't really allowed to explore. And then in Mill Neck, in Humes Estate, we have this 15-acre property that is part of the Humes Estate, which was purchased by the county for $5.2 million in 2009, and it was joined with land acquired by the nonprofit North Shore Land Alliance to the south. However, it had links to privately run Shoe Swamp Preserve to the northeast and Japanese Stroll Gardens to the north to create 120 contiguous acres of publicly accessible green space. There was not an improvement made, though the adjacent Shoe Swamp Preserve does have its own parking lot and kiosk. So the blue is land that was kept. This is land that was bought, and existing is light blue. I don't understand this map because I don't see light blue here. Let's go to the next one. In Muttontown, Hallwood Wentworth Estate, Nassau purchased the 18.3 acre site for $8.7 million in 2009, and this abuts the county-owned Muttontown Preserve, which consists of more than 500 acres. So, again, the improvements were not made here, though the existing preserve. So this is next to the Muttontown Preserve, and I'm assuming it's this area in green right here that is part of an area that is not really accessible to the public, though it should be. All right, go to the next one. Old Westbury, Bogner purchases. All right, so for a combined price of $6.2 million, Nassau had purchased or secured the development rights to 47.5 acres owned by the late philanthropist Margaret Phipps Bogner. And the outcome was there was an agreement with its nonprofit operator. The land served to extend the existing Old Westbury Gardens Museum and Preserve. So this actually is like a little corridor here. So we can show you this too as well on the Google Earth, which I will do. Brookville, Old. I'm not going to go over all these on the Google Earth, but I'll go over some of them. Nassau bought 40 acres, long used as an equestrian center for $12 million in 2008, and there's a private operator running a Nassau Equestrian Center on the site. Woodbury, Myers Farm. So if you know where this is off Woodbury Road, right here. So, all right. And in East Meadow, there's another farm, Frugie's Farm. The county spent operates as Frugie's Farm. And Malvern there's also a little farm in Malvern too, which is good. And Valley Stream, and this is a pocket park over here. How many of these are there? All right, Northwood Estate. Nassau purchased this 33.5 acre parcel for $11 million, adjacent to the county-owned Tiffany Creek Preserve. This land was then later deeded back to a private owner as part of a land swap agreement that netted the county another parcel of open space. This is the existing preserve here. Property, though now back in private hands, remains under a conservation easement. So even though it's privately owned, it cannot be developed. Okay, so again, we're going to look at this overview of the site. So you have the site here in Seaford, Baldwin Harbor, West Hempstead, one in Glen Cove. So there are a couple of places here. Red Spring Woods. This was supposed to be something that was a little accessible. We're going to look at all these places on Google Earth. Red Coat Preserve, another one on some of the North Shore. I think I missed those. Alright, so let's go ahead and look at Google Maps now, and let's look at these places. Get right back to this overview map here so we can actually find these places on Google Earth. We'll start off with the one at Seaford, and then we'll work our way around. Let me get this out of the way. Alright, so Seaford, there is this little piece of property right here that's right next to Cedar Creek Park, Island Channel Drive. Yeah, this is it right here. And it's actually very interesting because if we go over here, this is the area they're talking about. I think it's right over here. This is actually a little bit of a desert-like area. It could be a place that pitch pines could wind up maybe taking hold in. It would be interesting, or it would be a place to introduce pitch pines to grow in to recreate some of the coastal pine barrens. And I just did that, and my computer's deciding to be a complete dumbass. Hold on a second. Alright, so here we go. Here's this place in Seaford, and you can see this is the spot. It's just a big sand pit environment, but still interesting and a place I'd like to explore. Now that I know it is parkland, we can go and check it out, because there were signs that said private property, no trespassing, but obviously it's not private property. Again, they do this because they don't want... there's a lot of people maybe who live in the neighborhood that don't want people going here to visit this this area here. It's just a sand pit, but you know, it's never just a sand pit, because this could definitely become a pine barren desert type of environment if it was restored to that. It may have been at one time. So that's Seaford, and now we'll go to the one in Baldwin Harbor. So this one in Baldwin Harbor, which is over here, I think. Yeah, this is it. Parkway Drive. So this is the one in Baldwin Harbor, and this could be, I wonder if there are pine barrens on that site. But once again, if you get to the street here, you'll see that we look and we see that there's a fence, a dead end, and there's the sign, Parkway Drive, but there's no way in, and they have the fence there. There's no trails here either to really explore it, and that is, again, oh, was that a pitch pine in there? I don't know, but you never know what you might find. So that's one of the areas there. As far as the ones on the North Shore, I think that those are going to be a little harder to find. So let's see this. We'll look at one of the ones on the North Shore, and this one is Red Spring Woods, right? All right. So in Glen Cove, we're going to look over here. Go up here and show you this. So there's a lot of little hidden parklands that they don't really want you to know about, and that kind of annoys me because again, this land was purchased with the taxpayers' money. It should be open to the. All right, these are the woods right here. So these are the woods, Red Spring Woods, but there's no access to them. We go ahead and look at. There's no parking lot. There's no access. And no trails either, so it's not like people can even walk through here even if they wanted to. But again, you have I'm gonna say the word, you have snobs on the North Shore too. They're rich snobs, just like in the South Shore, that just want to try to influence the government and tell them, no, you can't have people come to our neighborhood to enjoy nature, because they may be different than us. That's the same kind of mentality as you get on the South, same kind of thing. It's just people with money a lot of times act like this, especially white people with money. So we have this area here too. You have this. All right. So you have this area here, Lower Francis. All right, Matneycock. Okay, we'll go to one more North Shore area. Be fair, we did 2 on the South Shore, so we'll do 2 on the North Shore. All right, Shoe Swamp. So it's somewhere over in this area here. It's Upper Francis Pond Preserve. So this is the area that is supposed to be a preserve, but it's marked on the map as that. But if you go here, you don't really see it marked very well, and you just have. Let's see, is this there a sign here? Let's see. All right, there it is. So there you go. So they did just put a sign in over here. So that's good. So this looks like a nice little place to check out too. Not pine barrens, but very interesting nonetheless. So go back to the map because there's one other area I wanted to point out to you, and then we're gonna have some final thoughts on this. There's one other area on the South Shore that I want to point out to you that is in Belmore. And it's part of Newbridge Road Park. This is Newbridge Road Park here in Belmore, all right? And if we can zoom out here, and if we can get this, this southern part of the park here, there's no access to this southern little undeveloped area. There's just a fence here. There's no access. I'm very curious about this area right here. This is another area. It's just, that's probably parkland, but not accessible to the public. So again, they have these little areas of parkland that they're not accessible to the public. And one other area I want to point out is along the Loop Parkway. They have these nice islands here, but there's no bike path along the Loop Parkway or pedestrian path. There's no way to access any of these marshy islands here along Meadowbrook Parkway. And what is of interest to me is that yes, there are actually pine barrens over here, but there's no way to access them. So if we go and we take a look at the street view, you'll see that there are pine barrens here. Let's see, I see them over here. So you have some stands of pitch pine here, but again, there's no way to access this. There's no path. There's no access for this. You can't walk along the parkway. It's not something I would recommend. It's not safe, and I've heard about the police actually giving people tickets for it. So there are the Pine Barrens there. Google did not get a very clear image there. You can see them over here too. There they are along the Meadowbrook Parkway. You have these Pine Barrens along the Meadowbrook Parkway and along the Loop Parkway. So there's another area right here along the Loop Parkway that's over here. That's even nicer than the other one. This is a really nice area, Pine Barrens. You can check it out here. You can see it's beautiful here. Yeah, these are pitch pines in here. Mostly pitch pines here, not Japanese black pines. So again, I don't know why the screen is blurry. I don't know if it's my computer or not. I think it's probably just Google Street View screwing up. Yeah, these are the pines right here. You can see these are definitely pitch pines right here. But this is parkland owned by the state, but there's no access to it. There's no access for I think the only way you can access it maybe is by boat, but technically no access, and you're not allowed to pull your car over and check it out. It's really nice though, and this is an area I would love to check out, but again, it's along the Loop Parkway, and there's no access for pedestrians, but just look at that. That's beautiful. That is beautiful. And as we wrap up this video on parkland that's off limits to the public, I want to talk about some areas in Suffolk County actually that are we're looking at a map from the Peconic Land Trust. I'll put the link in the description. We're talking about this piece of property right here next to the Tanger Mall. This is actually beautiful Pine Barrens. There's a Kettle Hole Lake in here, and it's called the Sabin Andrew E. Nature Preserve. So the trust was the recipient of this 32.7 acre property in Riverhead. So it was donated by the Tanger outlets, and most of the acreage is wetlands. But unfortunately, there's no way to really get to this property. It's fenced off. Access is only by permission. And again, this is land that should be available to the public to, enjoy nature, especially in an overdeveloped area like Riverhead, and it's not. I understand why sometimes they don't want to have, too much access to parkland. I completely understand that, but, it's very important that it is made available to people who really want to enjoy nature and study nature, and, especially the Pine Barrens, but anywhere. I think when we look, compare this to Ocean County, which actually I can go to their Ocean County Land Trust map here. So I can look at the Ocean County Land Trust, and every area in the Ocean County Land Trust is accessible to the public. And that includes this area right here. This is the latest preserve here, and this is the former sand mine. And it's now being reclaimed by the Pine Barrens. So again, it's another example of Ocean County being a lot more transparent in what they're doing, making sure that the land is available to the public, to the taxpayers who pay for this land to be preserved, to access it and enjoy it. So again, once again, we can learn a lesson from Ocean County on how to do things right, how to preserve land, and how to make it accessible to the public. I think they do an excellent job. One of the best park systems and open space systems in the entire that I've ever seen. So anyway, that is going to conclude this video. Take care, and thank you for watching.